Okay, so this is lesson 2. Okay, this lesson is going to be pretty much the exact opposite to the last lesson. In the last lesson we went from pieces, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, and we turned them into one big piece. This time we're going to take a few pieces and we're going to try and simplify those pieces into in some cases what looked like lesson 1. Okay, so this is going to be the first step towards doing that, and we're going to do that by identifying what's called this greatest common factor. Okay, so the greatest common factor is just simply something that can be found by looking at what's there, okay, in the equation, and removing it from the equation. Okay, so identifying it can look a few different ways. So I'm going to point you in the direction that there's 2 things you're looking for when you're looking at the greatest common factor, right? So anytime we have any term, you'll recall that a term has a number and a letter. Okay, in whatever, it could be X, it could be Y, whatever, right? So it only makes sense that the greatest common factor has 2 pieces. 1 is a number, and 2 is the variable. Okay. And when we combine them, number 1 and 2, the number and the variable, we get the greatest common factor. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is in the first question here, before we actually get to finding the greatest common factor, I'm going to show you the 2 pieces and then how they combine. Okay, so in A, I see numbers and I also see some variables too, but the whole deal with the greatest common factor, right? Being able to say that the GCF, we'll call it GCF from now on, right? GCF is what's the biggest thing that appears in both terms. Okay, so in this, I don't see a variable in both pieces. Okay, so we get to basically ignore that. Okay, but I do see that there is a 2. Like I could divide both these pieces by 2. If I divided this by 2 and that by 2, that would work, right? Because this would cancel with this, and then this here would just equal 2. Okay, so that works. So actually the GCF in this particular question, okay, the GCF for this question is just 2. Okay, now let's take a look at B now, because B is different from A. Okay, is there something, so this is basically GCF, if I wrote this down here, GCF is, this is what you're asking yourself every time you do this. Is there something that I can divide everything by? That should be one word, but okay. So is there something that exists in all of the terms that I can divide them all by? Okay, so in this particular question, this is different than A, but I can't divide by 3 this time, right? Because 3 doesn't go into 2 evenly. Nor does, I also can't do this. I can't divide them both by 2 either, because this doesn't work, right? This is just messy, right? They have to work on both of them. So with that being said, the only other thing that exists there is if I can divide these by x, right? X cancels with one of the x's there, and x cancels with this one. Okay, so your greatest common factor in this question is just simply x. okay? Because it's the thing that I can divide everything by, okay? Okay, now the last one, a little bit different again. Now I'm going to combine. So you can see here, okay, just to bring you back here, part A was just a number. Okay, in part A, we found just a number. Okay, in part B, I found just a variable. Okay, in part C, though, I'm going to combine them. Okay, so what's the thing? What's the biggest thing that I could divide both of these by? Well, I see 5 can go into 10. Okay, so that works. Okay, I can divide both these by 5 because 5 goes into 5 as well. But then I also see that there's a y there. So there you go. This works, right? Because this y is going to cancel with one of those. That's going to cancel with that 5. The y is going to cancel with the y. And the 5, 10 divided by 5, is just 2. Right? So your greatest common factor for this one is just 5y. That combines both of these, right? And that's what it means to be a greatest common factor. Is there something that we can divide everything by? And sometimes it includes just a number. Sometimes it includes a variable, okay? So this is going to get into what I was talking about at the beginning of this, right? In that on Monday's lesson, or the first lesson, we kind of took things. We took this, whatever was out front of the brackets, and we multiplied it in with distribution or the table method or FOIL, right? So today, that's what we would call the expanding, right? On Monday it was expanding. Today it's going to be factoring. Okay, so factoring is the opposite to expanding. Okay? So, but we're going to use our new skill of greatest common factor in order to factor these. Okay? So we're going to get pieces. Factor means pieces. Okay? So, in the first one, what would be your GCF in the first one? Let's say. What is the thing that I could divide both these by? 3. Okay. So the way this works is whatever your GCF is, you write out front, okay? And then you write what's left after you divide everything by 3. Okay, so the 3 here is going to cancel with the 3. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. So what's left is x plus 2. Okay, and this is your answer, actually. Now, there's one thing you can do to ensure that this is right? So I'm going to check in red here. Okay. I'm going to rely on your skills for Monday in order to be able to check this, to make sure that it's right. So what would happen if I took the 3 now and multiplied it back in? I'd better get the original question back, okay, without anything drawn in here. Okay, I'd better get this back if I do the red process. Well, let's check. 3 times x is 3x. That's from this distribution bracket, or rainbow. And then 3 times 2 is positive 6. So then I'm good, because I got the original back. So that's good. So let's check the second one now. Okay. I see here, okay, is there something I can divide all of these by? Okay, so now I'm starting to see x's in 2 terms, but they're not in all 3. So it's not as if I can go like this, because there's no x here. It doesn't work. Okay, so you can't have an x. Okay, you can only divide by 2. So that just means your GCF, or your greatest common factor, is 2. So how do I factor this using greatest common factor? You write the GCF out front, and you write what's left after you divide everything. 2 cancels with the 2. 4 divided by 2 is going to be 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? So you're going to be left with x squared plus 2x plus 3. Okay. And again, if I were to check this, this is just me being thorough, okay? Some of these questions don't necessarily need checking all the time, okay? But this is for your benefit to make sure that you're right. What happens if I put the 2 back in? I'd better get the original back, right? I better get this back down here when I expand it. So 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times 3 is 6. So then I'm right, because these match. Okay. Now, let's keep going. So here, I've got a GCF. We got to figure it out. What is it? It's whatever I can divide everything by. Okay, 5. Let's start with the numbers. The number 5 goes into all 3 of these numbers. So there's a start. Right, so I know the GCF starts with a 5. Now I also see x's in all 3 of these. Right, so the way it works though is I can only take out the number of x's of the lowest number. So by that I mean in this one here, there's 3 x's, then there's 2 x's, and then there's 1 x. I can only take 1 x out. Okay, so your greatest common factor is 5x. Okay, so when I rewrite this, now I'm going to rewrite everything without, or I'm going to write the result after I take the 5x out of everything, right? So we can do the 5 cancels the 5. One of these x's is going to cancel with one of those, and that's going to become a 2. 5 into 25 is 5. Well, let's do this from left to right. It's getting a bit messy now. Okay. So what you're doing is you're writing the result inside the brackets after you divide. Okay. So I'm going to bring all this back here so it's clear. Okay. So what you're doing is divided by 5x. Okay. So 5x cubed divided by 5x is x squared. Okay. And then 25 divided by 5 is plus 5, right? But then one of these x's cancels with that x, and you're just left with 5x. And then 10 divided by 5 is plus 2, right? So that takes care of this. And then this has a 1. This x cancels with that x. So it's just plus 2. How do I know I'm right? Well, I better make sure that my new answer matches up with the original question. Okay. So let's check it. 5x multiplied by that, and by that. And we'll just rewrite it. 5x times x squared. I'll do these one at a time. 5x multiplied by x squared is going to be 5x cubed. 5x multiplied by 5x is going to be plus 25x squared. And 5x multiplied by 2 is plus 10x. Okay, so now I know I'm right because these two match. Okay, so my answer, this, I'll put the answer in green here just so we're clear. That's my answer. That's my factored, what we call my factored answer. Okay. So let's keep going. 3 more left. Okay. So again, let's take a look at my GCF. What exists such that I can put into all 3 of those terms? So dealing with the numbers. 6 goes into 18, but 6 doesn't go into 4, right? But 2 goes into all three of those terms, right? So the number 2, I can start there. So first part of my GCF is going to be 2, right? And then I see x to the 4, x to the squared, and I see x to the 1. So I can actually divide everything by x, 2x. Okay. So here's my factoring answer. I'm going to write my GCF out front. 2x multiplied by 6 divided by 2 is 3. One of the x's from the bottom cancels out that x, so this becomes a 3, so it's 3x cubed, minus 18 divided by 2 is 9, and then one of the x's from the bottom cancels with the x there, and that becomes 9x, because that's all that's left. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2, and the x cancels with the x there. So there's your answer. Okay. And if I were to check this by distributing, I get the original back without all the scratched out stuff. Okay. Okay. So 2 more. Okay, things start to get more interesting now, because I can introduce multiple variables into my greatest common factor, right? So let's identify what's in all of these. Well, 3 can go into all of them, so let's start there. So what am I going to divide each of these pieces by? Could be 3 or negative 3. Let's take negative 3. Okay, so negative 3 can go into all of these. Okay, now I also see an x here, an x here, and an x here. So I can put, okay, there's an x in all of them. Okay. But then I also see there's a y here, a y here, and a y here. Well, I could put a greatest common factor of y. Okay. So now what I want to do is write the result after I remove the greatest common factor. So it's 3xy. What's left? Okay, well, the negative 3 cancels with the negative 3. An x cancels with an x. And a y cancels with a y. So what's left is I'm left with an x, y squared in the first one. Now, oh, that's negative 3, sorry. Okay. Now the next one, 15, positive 15, divided by negative 3, that's going to be negative 5. Okay. So that takes care of that. Okay. Now an x cancels with an x, so we don't have anything to write. Okay. Now a y cancels with a y, so there's still one y sitting there though. Okay. Okay. And then the last one, negative 27 divided by negative 3. Well, that's positive 9, because that takes care of this. Okay. And then an x cancels with an x, and a y cancels with a y. And that's it. You're done. Okay. So you're just basically, you're finding what goes into all three of them. Okay. Evenly. And then you write whatever that thing is out front, and then you write the products of whatever's left after you've taken it out. Okay. Okay. One more. Okay, so this one's a little bit complicated. Looks a little bit different. Okay, so again, you want to identify what is the one thing that is in all three terms. Okay. All right, this one looks a little bit different, but I see it right away. I see a w plus 1, I see a w plus 1, and I see a w plus 1. So what happens if I make my GCF w plus 1? Well, I'm just going to follow the same process. W plus 1 goes out front, and I write what's left after I divide everything by plus 1, w plus 1. Okay, well, what's left? W plus 1 cancels with w plus 1. I'm left with 4x out front. W plus 1 cancels with w plus 1. I'm left with 5y. W plus 1 cancels with w plus 1, minus 3. Okay, so your final answer, this is your final answer. Okay, and if you were to check this, like if this was in a bracket, you'd get this into all three, would give you this back again. Okay, so there's a sheet here. It'll be attached in Google Classroom. Again, if you have any questions at all, just shoot me a message. Any specific questions with the homework, I can do those